to Aotearoa, New Zealand, my home country. Thank you for coming all this way so that I could just be here today and talk to you. And thanks for making that bingo square really easy for me to tick off, the one that says, find a digital nomad who's been to your country. Hello. I was like, all of you. Super fantastic. So yeah, again, welcome. I'm here today to talk to you about how to stay on purpose and prioritize the most important things in your life. Now, you may be wondering why I am qualified to do this, and I'd like to let you know that's because about 2.5 years ago, I made a pretty massive life-changing decision. I went from being a digital nomad, like you all are, lying around in the grass with my laptop, espousing freedom to everybody, traveling to 70 countries, living out of a suitcase for 6.5 years full-time, and being the suitcase entrepreneur, in case anybody remembers that. And I swapped that out for lying on my bed with a notebook, which is a little bit tongue-in-cheek because ultimately what I did is came back to New Zealand after being away for around 12 years and decided to swap my suitcase for this incredible property about 35 minutes north of here. Kit and Nick have been there in our 240 square metre barn, which is big enough in itself. We have a co-working space and a gym. We call this Kairani Haven. It is a home away from home for us. But this was like a dream. I'd always wanted a piece of land, and a lifestyle property in New Zealand means an acre or more. So we've got 2.5 acres here. And over 5 bedrooms in this house where there's just 2 of us and a couple of dogs. And as you can imagine, this was a pretty major identity shift because I had my sexy Rimowa purple suitcase, which I still have, and then this, like nuts, crazy. Why would I do this? I'm not fully sure. And what this threw up for me is quite a few things. My whole identity was wrapped up in being the suitcase entrepreneur. And when I came back to New Zealand, I, 1, didn't travel a lot in the first year. 2, I fell in love with my partner Josh, so I'd been single as a digital nomad for all those years. And we got 2 gorgeous white German Shepherd puppies, Kayla on the left, Angel on the right, who's a little bit bigger now. And Josh often jokes that we bought the largest dog house ever for them. So you can imagine this was a pretty big deal for me, and a massive sense of identity went out the door because in addition to falling in love, buying this amazing property, getting 2 puppies, which I'd always wanted, because you can't have that in your suitcase, I also decided to take a business sabbatical for a year, which didn't end up being a year, it was 3 months. So you can imagine how much I changed my life. Probably a little bit too much change. Like, I'm a big fan of embracing change, I love it, but turning your life 180 degrees and throwing everything out of the window that you have lived and breathed and had as your identity for 10 years, I don't advise. It's pretty freaking crazy. And for the first time in my life, for somebody who's a goal setter and has purpose and loves living on purpose, I was really lost. I'm not gonna lie. It was actually a pretty shitty time. Here I was in this amazing place with this puppy nibbling my toes all the time and staying at home like a fur baby mum while Josh went to his business in town, and I was like, what the heck, what's my next step? Like, what the heck am I gonna do? And so I had a chat to Josh one day and he said, well, let's just make a start. We actually headed off to Brisbane to see his family, and while we were there we had 3 days. And he said, let's just go for a walk. Let's walk and talk. And to this day, the walk and talk has become our favourite way of dreaming and scheming and thinking about what we want in life. So we just started talking about stuff. Natalie, like, what's a new business you might want to start now you're back in New Zealand? Let's brainstorm on that. What health goals do you have? What's top of mind for you? Like, where would you like to volunteer that you're back, now that you're back in New Zealand? How much time do you want to spend with your family? And we walked and we talked and we got excited, and slowly my wheels got turning again, and I was like, okay, it's actually up to me to create a new chapter in my life and figure out how I want to turn up, make an impact, and live with purpose. So it was pretty exciting, and we got back to the house, and because Josh is a developer and I'm a bit of a geek, we created a spreadsheet, not the sexiest thing in the world, but we started color coding it and putting things in. And the suggestion was, because we both have tools and framework from our years in coaching and facilitation in business, was let's just start with creating a system that works for us. Because I'm sure all of you have different ways in which you turn up and set goals and plan and have intentions. And maybe you have journals and notebooks and vision boards, but we thought, how do we curate all the things that we really love, that we know will work for us in our personal style, and put it together into a system that actually helps us live with more purpose. And so we started with the power of 3 things. Because would you agree that as humans we tend to have to-do lists that are as long as our arm, and we tend to overcomplicate things or put tons of stuff into our everyday? Can I see a show of hands if that does sound like you? Okay, so 75%, thank you for being honest. I definitely do. I love packing things into my life, and I actually get energy from doing more than less, but I also know how much power comes from being more focused. So the power of 3 things is simply this. Pick a time frame. So it could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month. And then ask yourself, what are the 3 most important things that I can do in this time frame? These can be across any area of your life. And then, when you get to the end of that time frame, let's say it's the end of the week, you basically say, did I achieve that thing? Did I hit it? Did I miss it? Or did I progress it? Did I make some progress but actually not complete it to the way that I wanted? And then, the most important thing that we realise from this process is to reflect. So not just go, okay, I missed it, but actually go, why did I miss it?
I'm so sorry.
That's all good.
My phone shut off.
This is more of a priority right now. Just kidding. No, it's all good. Totally been there before. So yeah, this was the most important thing for us, because how often do we go, okay, didn't get that done, let's just go into the next week or the next thing, and not actually look at why we might have missed that. And what Josh and I found is that we were starting to put stuff on our list that wasn't actually a priority, but it felt like we should be doing it. Anybody else experience that? Like it's a should. Oh, I should be doing this client proposal today, or yeah, I guess I should be doing this thing, rather than actually I really want to do this thing. I get to do this thing. So it started to illuminate for us some really exciting things. So I thought I'd share with you a beautiful colour-coded spreadsheet. If you're on your spreadsheets, bear with me, you can do this doodling in a notebook, you can do it however you want. But I actually thought I'd share some of the things over the last year. So Josh and I have been creating this system and living with it for the last 2.5 years. So we have a big ass spreadsheet now, tons of data. And so I can show you, and I'll talk to the colours in a few slides, but I can talk to some of the things that came up for me in my life, and things that I wanted to do are on the left, and then on the right is whether I hit them, miss them, or progress them. So just some examples of things that are going on in my life, and this is directly cut and pasted from our geeky spreadsheet. And there's a lot going on. You can see there's some business, there's some health in there, there's some relationship stuff, there's some impact, there's some personal growth. And what we started to realise, as I said, is that we were consistently missing some things in there that just weren't important to us. And then we started making more time and prioritising the things that really mattered to us. And initially when we started, we had all business. Every single time it's all business. And I was like, this isn't like a fulfilling life. We're just super focused on one part. So we actually started thinking about more tools and frameworks that we were used to. Has anybody seen I believe it's called the Circle of Life before? You've probably seen it in some format. Always beautiful colour wheel here. And through research, they've shown that if you are focusing on these areas in your life, and at no point can you be a 10 out of 10 on all these areas. You'd be Superwoman or Superman. But at any point, you should be focusing on some of these areas to live a more fulfilling, happy, and I dare say somewhat balanced life. I'm not a firm believer in having a balanced life, but a fulfilling life, as I like to call it. So we took that and we're like, there's a few too many things on there. We'll reduce it a little bit, and we came up with, actually there's 9 on here, but we've taken Life Pilot off. Life Pilot was one that we put in there when we were focusing on how to build this system for ourselves and how to turn our dreams into reality. And these days we just have the 8. So these were important to us, and I would suggest that you see if they're important to you or swap them out for things that mean a lot to you. So for us, we wanted to really get clear on the habits that we needed. And often a habit would be in our weekly set of goals for a couple of weeks until it was actually something that we were doing without thinking. For me, that was meditation. Then personal growth, for me that's around studying, stretching yourself, challenging yourself, maybe that's around some coaching, meeting new people, in any way that I am growing personally. And then health and lifestyle, pretty explanatory. Lifestyle for us was getting out in nature. How are we enjoying our everyday life? Are we going to the movies? Are we catching up with friends for dinner? Impact for me is the work that I'm doing impactful or making an impact in other people's lives? So an example of that would be, am I working on a book manuscript that's going to get out into this world, or am I working on a course that's going to really help people out? And then professional or business activities going on. wealth, financial freedom, and relationships. And Josh and I had a little bit of an argument, ironically, on this because he thought this should just be between him and I. And I was like, no, I want to focus on my relationships with my friends, with my family, with my peers, with my community. So again, it's totally up to you, but the more that we got clarity over these are the areas in our life that are important to us, the easier it was then to start figuring out what our goals and intentions were. And then, just to add in some more panache and pizzazz, we added in some pretty important prompts. Now, we don't use these all the time, because you can imagine some of these questions are pretty out there, and they force you to really look at yourself. But could you imagine that if you asked any of these questions on any day to yourself, or got a friend to ask it to you, how you would actually show up more, show up more authentically? How you would actually really call yourself and own your shit. So for example, Josh said, where are you sleepwalking through in life? And I was like, oh, nowhere, I'm so awesome. And I was like, no, actually, shoot, I've been like way too distracted on my phone and tied up in the digital world. Or I haven't actually gone and visited my family as much as I thought, given that's what I actually came back to New Zealand to do. And these questions are really, really powerful to ask yourself at any point when you feel you're losing a little bit of purpose in life, or losing a little bit of focus. Has anybody ever asked themselves questions like this? Or, yeah? You get to the heart of things pretty quickly, huh? You do actually get to call yourself out on what you're not doing enough of. And then we developed these things that we like to call rhythms, because as much as I'm a free spirit, I'm also pretty disciplined, and I know that good things come from having this regular, repetitive pattern. And especially for you traveling the world, when everything else is going crazy and you don't actually have something that you can stick with, these rhythms really, really help. So I've actually found Life Pilot easy to, that's what we call it, our system. I find it really easy to use when I'm traveling because this is just something that I commit to. And we have the daily heartbeat. So each night before, we will put what are our 3 most important things for tomorrow. And then at the end of that day, we will check back with each other. Did we hit it? Did we progress it, or did we miss it? And we'll set our next 3. And if there's something that's coming up that's a bit like a red flag, we'll call each other on it. But every single day, we set the 3 most important things for the next day. And then we have a weekly check-in, and this is my favourite thing. We have literally been doing this for 2.5 years. I think we've only missed a few. Josh and I will go to breakfast at a cafe, or we might go on a walk with the dogs, and we will literally talk about how was the week. And when we first started, we couldn't even remember what we'd done on Saturday versus what we did on Monday. It was atrocious, and that in itself kind of called us out again, like, we're sleepwalking through our weeks, we're too busy, we can't remember. So we're quite good at the recall now. And it's a really nice way to go back through and go, oh, what did I do this week? Oh, that's right, I had that great conversation with an awesome person. I published this podcast that went really, really well and resonated with people. Well, that's right, we had that amazing dinner with friends. I'm really glad I shipped this awesome website to the client. And then we do this fun thing called rose, thorns, and bananas. Has anybody done the rose and thorns thing before? Yeah, so rose is a good thing that's happening in your life. For example, I get to speak at 7 and 7 today. A thorn might be that earlier this week I had a pretty confrontational startup meeting, which kind of actually left me processing a lot. So that was a bit of a thorn. Wasn't a fun thing to have in the week. And then a banana is that I actually hit 10,000 followers on Instagram this week, which was a bit of a surprise and just made my day. And the banana bit we got from our friend's daughter who was at kindergarten, and they were using rose, thorns and bananas. So as you can see, we just kept pulling in tools and processes that worked for us. And then we set our weekly goals and go off into the week and do those, and then every Sunday we come back and see whether we've hit, missed or progressed them. So you can start to see a bit of a pattern. And then every month we get together and we share 2 to 3 hours together. So we might go to one of the wineries that I hear many of you have been to, and maybe in your time in New Zealand, because they're so awesome. We might sit there and dream and scheme and go over how did our month go. We'll go through the same process, but it really starts to get illuminating. And early on, I said to Josh, hey buddy, you keep putting in this thing that just gets missed week in, week out. Isn't that a sign that maybe it's not important to you? It's not a priority? And he's like, yeah. And he'll do the same to me. He's like, Nat, I see that you keep saying you're going to go through all these courses and you put them in when you've already got a ton going on in your life. I don't feel like you're giving yourself the space to do it. Is it really important right now? And I'm usually like, probably not. And then finally, we have seasonal dreaming. In fact, we're going to Taupo next week. We've booked an Airbnb. which wasn't around when I first started being a digital nomad, by the way. That's how ancient I am. Neither was Uber. And we will have an Airbnb, and we will go to the hot pools, and we'll go out for dinner, we'll go for a swim in the lake, and I'm probably going to do a 90k ride because I'm training for a half Ironman, and I want to go on the course. But during that time, we're also going to talk about our dreams and our schemes, and definitely start thinking through into 2020 and everything we've learned this year and what we want to take through with us into the next decade, which is pretty crazy. And then once a year, we will take a whole week sort of break, or digital sabbatical, and that's our annual adventure, and that's where we get to dream really big. That's where we get to look at what does the next 3 or 5 years look like, and we also now have this fantastic data to be able to go, is this realistic? And sometimes it's not, but that's good because you've got to push yourself or stretch yourself, and also just think about what is the most fulfilling way for us to spend our lives together and as individuals. Which leads me to this big question of how do you take a grand vision for your life, which I'm sure many of you have, and break it down into what do I need to do tomorrow? Does anybody else struggle with that? Quite a disconnect, right? Like, woohoo, 3 years from now I want to be X, and what do I need to do tomorrow to make that happen? Really difficult. Has anybody here done a vision board before? Yeah? So I'd actually just love to know, sorry, shout out at me, but how effective has it been for you looking at this pretty pictures that you put up there?
It hasn't.
Thank you for your honesty. Yeah, and I feel like I love vision boards, right? They're cool, and you go, yeah, I want this car and this house, or maybe you want to travel the world for 1,000,000 years, but there's no way to get from there to here. So Josh and I appreciated that, and given he's a developer, and we worked backwards, and we're like, okay, what if we took a 3-year vision, and then we're able to put it into our spreadsheet and work it backwards? And I actually have taught my community for years and done for myself something called the painted picture, which I got off Cameron Herald, who's based in Vancouver, Canada, a business coach. And it's actually for your business. So it used to be that you would paint a 3-year vision for yourself, but in the present tense, which was the difference. It was really powerful. So you'd state, my business is actually doing this right now. I have this kind of a team. I have these kind of amazing customers. We get this kind of media. We have this kind of philosophy in our team, etc., etc. And you're saying it in the present tense, and it makes it really real. And I remember the first time I did mine, I was in Malaysia taking my first ever digital sabbatical, so I did it all offline. And in about 2 hours, I created this 3-year vision for my business, and it was epic and awesome. And then I put it up on SlideShare, and I made it public, and guess what happened? In the first year, 60% of it came true. 60%. I had a best-selling book that I published, and some of that was within my control, but not necessarily the best-selling bit. And I was already booked to speak at a TEDx, which was on my 3-year vision. And the reason that most of this stuff happened within the first year is that I finally said to the universe, I'm really, really clear on what I want. Please help me get it. Surprising when that happens. So peers and community stood up and went, oh, I know somebody who's at TEDx I could probably introduce you to, or I'd love to help you get your book out to the world. And then other people started using the painted picture and things were happening, and I remember somebody emailing me going, Natalie, this stuff really works. Most of it's already come true and I'm just not ready for it. What do I do? I was like, yeah, so when you turn up with intention and you ask the universe for what you want, guess what? It happens. But one thing that somebody also pointed out to me was at the very end of my painted picture slide deck was one slide dedicated to meeting the love of my life. And they rightly called me on it, for which I'm really thankful. And they said, Natalie, you just put 80 slides together on how awesome you wanted your business to be, and your team, and you as a leader. And then you put one slide at the end of, yeah, send me some great guy. And I was like, yeah, I can see why that's not happening. To which point I went, okay, let's use this tool again and think about doing a perfect man list, which might sound really odd. It was an idea somebody gave me. And it got me thinking intentionally about the type of person I would love to show up in my world and the qualities that they have, not how they look, just the qualities they had. And guess what, 2 months later, there's Josh. And I was like, again, thank you. Once I got clarity and I asked for it, it turned up. Which led us to creating Life Canvas, which was pretty much the painted picture, but for your life. And in its essence, it's a Google SlideShare where you put a pretty picture, so a little bit of that vision board stuff coming in, pretty picture of what this goal or intention means to you, and then you state in the present tense what that area of your life is going to look like 3 years from now, and you look at it regularly, and that's the key. You look at it regularly, we revisit it at our annual adventure, at our seasonal dreamings, and again, it's just a beautiful way to have a holistic look at your life. But we take it from there and we actually put it across into, okay, if this is happening in 3 years, how do I make this happen this year? And then what would I need to do in the year after that? And then the third year would be that goal. Does that make sense? I highly recommend doing it with a large jug of sangria, and Portugal by the beach, which is where we first did it. Not long after I bought a little investment property in Portugal. If anybody ever wants to stay there, it's on Airbnb. That's pretty cool. But I also will advise that if you drink too much sangria, your goals get pretty out there. And when we were looking back 3 months later, I was like, why did we think that we were going to be professional masters tennis players in the space of a year? Josh hadn't played in like 5 years and I was pretty scratching on the court. But outside of that, so many of these things have come true. And when we were off the mark, again, it identified and showed us it either one, wasn't that much of a priority in our life, or two, we weren't filtering it back into then our quarterlies and our monthlies and our weeklies and our dailies. And for those of you who don't like sort of structure, or this is all sounding a bit much, you'd be surprised how easy it becomes. Initially, I'm not going to lie, it was pretty hard to think of even 3 things I wanted to do tomorrow and just narrow it down to 3. And most people are like, can't I have 5 or 10? And the point of it is that with 3 things, you get really, really clear on if you did these 3 things by 11 a.m. this morning, you're going to feel like you've won the day already, and the rest of the day is yours to do what you like with. So it could be ticking off that long list of to-dos, or it could be going out for a run or a swim or going out with friends. So this power of 3, which started this whole system, has been critical to everything. And from there, it's quite easy actually to set your monthly goals and then to come back to going, what do I need to do this week and today? So it's pretty special. And I just wanted to give you sort of an overview of how this would look. So this is actually real-time data right now. So the top one is my quarterly goals from September through to December. And as you can see, we also do an on-track, off-track. So I'm on track for the top 2, and I'm off-track on the other one because I'm actually, frankly, waiting to do that course in December when I'm taking a bit of a sabbatical to focus on writing. And then that translates into my monthlies. So for example, the fact that I want to write another book and I have it in my head, I'm also doing an SEO course to get better at understanding how to drive more traffic to my website, how to make my blog posts and articles more search engine friendly, which is all going to lead into making more of an impact with my work into next year. And I sold out and launched the damn course accelerator, and that is leading to some pretty cool revenue for later this year. So that one was already hit. And then I am actually a little off track on the SEO. I updated it this morning, and I'm on track on my meditation. So I wanted to do daily meditation where I use the Insights timer. I really like guided meditation, but I also wanted to challenge myself and do 50% of my daily meditations by myself. So just breathing through it. Not going so well on that, more of the guided, but the point is I'm turning up and I'm meditating every day, which is really important for me. And then this was actually weekly, apologies. So in order to meet that monthly goal, I needed to, for example, in this particular week, pre-sell 4 spots on my accelerator. I was going to a Future of Learning conference, so I made that fun. I was like, learn lots at the Future of Learning conference, which I did. And then we recently bought a little investment property in Gisborne. You're seeing a theme here. And so I actually went there and stripped some wallpaper and got into it. So it was quite a bizarre week, but you can see there's quite a lot of colour going on in here, and my life is pretty fulfilling. And I'm not just focused on one thing all the time. And then I can see where I'm going in terms of being on track, off track, and what I'm hitting, or what I'm progressing. And this simple power of 3 and this little spreadsheet, which is full of colour, guides our life in a really, really beautiful and very honest, transparent way. And so I guess the thing that I really, really want to leave you with is that a goal without a plan is only a dream. So no matter how you get around to creating your life system that puts your priorities at the heart of everything you do and lets you live on purpose, always needs to have a plan so that you can turn your dreams into reality. And if you'd like to get in touch with me and you'd like to try out the spreadsheet, we've actually turned it into a little 10-day challenge now, but I'm happy to give it to you access for free. And I fully suggest that you customize it however you want and change out the colours and the fonts and the areas of life, but please do hit me up. And now that I'm Insta famous, please connect with me there and tag me with any fun photos of me looking like a goober that you've caught while I've been here on stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
haven't been to 7 at 7 before, we do things a little differently. First of all, we draw silly cartoons of all of our speakers. There's a woman named the Cruising Cartoonist, and every year she stalks every speaker, figures out what their speech is about, and draws a little cartoon of them, for instance, chasing after their dreams.
It's Frisbee, I play ultimate Frisbee. Just wondering what it is. I love that.
And then we do a Q&A. So I will kick off every Q&A with a question to give you time to think about what questions you might have for Natalie. And then our mic runners will come to you if you raise your hand. So, Natalie, first question. What do you do if, say, you're at a conference and you get lots of inspiration and you write down lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of goals in like one category? Do you have a system for cutting things out of your list? Something's not a good goal.
Yeah, it's a really great question. So I love differentiating between what's a goal and what's an intention. And so I think if you've got tons and tons and tons of goals on your list, it actually is really nice to pause and reflect and go, what is my intention of how I want to turn up here? Because an intention is actually a state of being in a way in which you want to go forward with things. And if you adopt that intention from the get-go, it can quite often lead to many of those goals being hit before you kind of know it. Just by proxy that you are turning up in the state that you need to be in order to hit those. And I would also suggest hopefully following some of the things I talked about here about just getting really clear each time on looking at that big exciting list and going, what is the biggest priority for me right now? What would move the needle in my life, in my business right now? And the rest can go onto a page of future greatness, right? So it doesn't mean you have to let it go, it just means it's not right now, because we're only human. And even though you're amazing, because you're here for a start in Aotearoa, it doesn't mean you can do everything at once, nor should you need to.
Excellent. Yes, I love the future greatness. That's such a great idea. All right, questions for Natalie, perhaps about the Life Pilot program, about what it was like to be a nomad before Airbnb. We've got one here.
So much more adventurous.
I remember those days. It was hard.
Yeah, it was.
You mentioned that you do this with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend doing something like this with an accountability partner?
Yeah, totally. And thank you for sharing that. I wanted to say that here. So we have people doing it with friends, with family. Actually, and you can do it by yourself, but maybe each week when you're doing your reflection, it's really nice to just call a friend and say, hey, could we meet for coffee? And just, you can ask me these 3 questions. What are my roses, thorns, and bananas? So yeah, anybody who's willing to show up and commit with you, it's a really great process.
Absolutely. Love accountability. I think I saw a hand over here.
Please,
my gosh, there we go.
Questions. Yay.
Thank you. Hi, Natalie. First of all, thank you for bringing the podcast back.
Well, my podcast? Or
Your podcast.
Oh, right. Yeah, take a little
You let it
sabbatical.
go, and then you,
Yeah.
you came back in, and
Thank you.
I'm one of those people that really appreciated you coming back, so thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to ask you about the time where you decided to let that go, and then you also let go of some of your team, and then kind of like rebuilt. I kind of want to get a sense of like what was going on and how it's kind of evolved now. Like, are you back with a team again? And
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. So that was probably right around that time when I threw like everything out the window, including my identity, and went, holy crap. So I did, I have always had a virtual team of contractors, so I did sort of say, hey, I'm going on a business sabbatical for a while. The systems are working pretty well. There'll probably be less work for you. I also wanted to take a break from the podcast because I've been doing it for 6.5 years. And, you know, I think as a content creator, there's a certain point at which you might get a little jaded or feel you're not offering enough value. And so to answer your question, it did feel pretty full on letting a lot of that go, but it then took about, I'm not kidding, 12 to 18 months to get back on track. And in that time, I've fallen back in love with all the things that I fell in love with when I first started my business. And for a while there, I wasn't in love with them. And that was really important to me to rediscover the bits that I loved, because there's a certain point for those of you in business where you kind of stop doing the things that were your wheelhouse and you start doing more of the managing, leading based things, and you forget about the stuff that you really love and are really good at. So basically I had to go on a bit of a journey of falling back in love with my business and the things that I do love and am good at, and I had to rediscover them through a process, often through this as well, and also just learning back from my community.
It's so important to recommit every so often, make sure you're on the right track. Robin, got a question here?
I'm just piggybacking off of that.
How do you recommend getting back on track when you've taken a sabbatical, and specifically like an 18-month sabbatical.
Is that what you're on? Awesome.
I've been like starting a business and then I'm like, okay, slow, but it's like, yeah, getting lost and like, I know what I need to do, but then like, I'm one of those people where it's like, I'll put 10 things on a list to do and then maybe one will happen.
So it's a really great question, and my honest school of thought on this is throw yourself into a time-limited project, even if it's 3 months. So commit to either doing something for somebody else or working on a project with somebody, or for example saying, this is a deadline that I'm going to hit, like put it out there publicly. In the next 3 months I'm going to launch a thing or do a thing, because the smaller that time frame is, the more motivated you'll get. And I found even in 3 months of having a business sabbatical, like I was reading books and I was doing courses and I was actually just like got into this mode of chill. And in order to kick that back, I needed to have a project and a timeline, because nothing moves you more than publicly saying you're going to do something. So even if you just pick, hey, in the next 2 weeks I'm going to produce X or something, I think that'll get you out of nice sabbatical mode, which is great, but it will kind of like light a fire under your butt and get you back into just doing one thing.
Yeah, awesome. All right, we have time for one more question.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm a professor, so I'm thinking a lot what to tell my students in terms of what to do with their lives. I think in an audience like that, where you sort of have an entrepreneurial mindset and an international mindset and generally an open mindset, that opens up a lot of possibilities, but it also opens an infinite amount of future paths, because you don't do what just is being done around here, but you're actively thinking about it. So how do you come up with your first principles, other than the sangria? So how do you come up with this, what you aspire to in life? Because, if you're out of a particular tradition that's not given to you, you have to come up with it. And I think, that then becomes very important, because I love the system, how you break it down from where I want to be in 5 years to what do I need to do Tuesday morning at 9:30. But it still leaves the problem open, what do I want to be in 5 years? Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you so much. Great question. I think you should always be probing about what do I want to be when I want to grow up, and you should never just stay on one particular dream or path. But to answer your question, the backcasting method, which you might have heard of, where you actually look back at what are you really good at, what has lit you up before, what do your friends say about you that you're really, really good at. If you actually look back, and I'm not talking about like maybe even past failures and things that didn't go so well, but if you take the lesson from those and add up all the experiences in your life from when you were a kid through to when you were studying maybe through to now, that often charts for me where I need to be going. So it's not instant clarity, but it certainly limits, I guess, a bit more of the whoa, international like whole platform to be on, and takes it back to the, wait a minute, who am I at the core? Who do I want to be, and what have I already got that I can capitalize on?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie. Everyone give her a round of applause.